Well, Duncan, you were just about
damn
to...
it! No parental guidance.
No parental guidance. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like,
should have gone for that.
I would love to know why my camera is flickering, but I cannot seem to figure it out.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I can manage getting any restrictions from my parents. Not without not without a medium or a Ouija board.
Special guidance. Oh. Although I did see a YouTube video recently talking about sighting a well from a person within this sphere, and they use they employed a water dowser, one of the like sound funny rods that crossed over. And they talked about it in full belief, and I was slightly surprised at that.
Oh.
They did actually find a well. But then again, they dug down significantly far, but it was a special type of well geologically. That was it was an artesian well, so it was a well where the head is below the water table, so that it would would just expel water all the time. So it was
not one that's like slightly overpriced and not really better quality than the stuff you get in the supermarket. Not that.
No, that's an artisanal well.
Yeah. I was even trying to think like, oh no, you're thinking of an Atlassian. I was like, oh, it's a software company that did quite well during the pandemic. No one's going to get that reference. I'll just
really tangible links.
Yeah. How much do you know about software as a service? Actually, for this audience, probably quite a lot.
Yeah, usually. Well, talking of tangible links, Duncan, you were just about to say about being on 2/3.
Oh, yeah. And audio screw-ups, that's all. That's just audio things. How I bought a really nice fancy microphone and then recorded from the wrong one. Yeah.
Isn't that what you do on 2/3? I'm fairly sure that they're like Jan.
It's just joining in.
Yeah, for the first season. Yeah. 20 episodes.
Yeah, it was buy an expensive mic and then record out of the webcam.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. Well done me.
I can't imagine anyone ever doing that. I never do that on Discord or anything like that.
No.
I mean, I think we've got a long way to go before we can, kind of reach the same level of mic drumming.
James, you need to tell us about ears.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So I teased earlier about ears.
Yeah, teased.
Good.
Now for those of let's do a fantastic podcast thing of demonstrating. This is the non-normal ear. They're very pointy normally. That's not a weird thing, but this one's normal. This one is not. It is significantly swollen due to a PP related incident.
So this isn't just cauliflower ear, because I feel like I've heard of cauliflower ear. God, I don't know.
James is definitely not the fighter type.
No, it's a single incident.
Oh.
Would anyone like to guess how my PPE? I should have not worn PPE.
Did something get caught and then the elastic snapped back?
So
it can't be a volume related thing because ears don't swell up when you.
Apologies. My video is going to cut out real quick. Hold on.
So I was down in the workshop and thought, I'm covered in dust from unloading a load of auction things. It was rule bending, so like a cutting and bending steel rule to form cutting dies. And it was in the same workspace as a big scroll saw with a kind of 4-inch deep throat. And so all of that dust was covered on everything. So I thought I'll use the air compressor, get everything off it, and then at the end of unloading, I'll have a shop shower. I'll shower myself down with compressed air. And of course, compressed air is quite noisy when it comes out at volume. And I thought, I'll put ear defenders on. I keep ear defenders, the cheap 3M one that everyone seems to have, the yellow ones, next to noise-related things. They're kind of the I can't think of the term, but I'll just quickly machines. Yeah. Where you should wear PPE. Yeah. So all of my I'll just quickly machines I have something next to them. So I put the ear defenders on and start showering down. I go, about 10 seconds in, I think, oh, there's a bit of metal inside the ear defender.
Oh no!
And then I quickly took them off. The bit of metal fell out, and it wasn't a bit of metal; it was a wasp. So I have had a wasp sting me on the very outer bit of my ear. And what made it, and of course, through sheer frustration, I made sure that it was more 2 than 3 dimensional at the end of it. But it was already dead before it stung me.
So it was probably just the compressed air and the wiggling of the thing that
it was just enough of me like moving my head around, because I did all of my body, like showering off t-shirts.
So you stung yourself with a dead wasp, is what you're saying.
I wasped my ear. Yeah. And so this is
impressively
swollen. Not so swollen.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
That's wild.
So chances are it had probably settled into your ear defenders, hadn't used them for a while as the temperature started to drop.
And froze to death. Yeah.
Froze to death. You've then put it on, and you've just, as you put it on, you've snagged it onto your ear. And because they're such evil little things, it's automatic. Even in death, it has submitted toxin
I
into your...
assume so. But the thing is, as anyone who's listening to this with a pair of ear defenders near them, ear defenders sit together closed. So the cups squash themselves against each other. So it's not that the wasp has inadvertently, oh, silly me, I've accidentally bumbled into this.
No, it's what it crawled in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actively entered into the ear defenders, confirming the theory that wasps are bastards. And it is chosen to, crawl in there.
Yeah. It chose violence.
Yeah, it did. It chose violence. It does not want peace. All it wants is problems.
As it happens, I have a not dissimilar story from this week. So I've been decorating.
Please tell me you weren't playing cricket.
I wasn't playing cricket. No.
Not a box related.
No. I've been decorating my eldest's bedroom. They're off at university now, so we thought, right, it's a good opportunity to get their room tidied up because it hasn't been decorated in at least 10 years. So as part of that, we have a carpet cleaner. One of those kind of Bissell. You fill a tank up with hot water, you fill another tank up with carpet detergent, you go back and forth, press a trigger, detergent and water goes onto the carpet, let go of the trigger, it vacuums up the water and the dirt in that water. So one of those great little things to have. Yeah. So got it up. It's been in the shed for a long time, but it came out of the shed earlier in the year and was in the conservatory. That carried it upstairs. But okay, right, plugged it in. Had to wait a couple of days actually because of only had about 20 milliliters of carpet cleaner left in the tub we had at home, so I had to get some more. So I think it was Friday night. Yeah, I think it was Friday night. Picked up some more carpet cleaner. Came home. But, right, I'll get this done now, so it's got time to get going, get drying over because it'll take a good 24 hours for it to dry. I wound the cable, and a cable like a lot of vacuum cleaners and similar. You've got a sort of 2 brackets, one at the top, one at the bottom. The one at the bottom is fixed, and the one at the top swivels, so you can just turn it around, pull the cable off, falls on the floor. Anyway, I kind of pull that off, and because of the way I tied it on previously, the whole thing just flopped onto the floor. I thought, oh, right, I'm going to have to take the plug had been wrapped around. So went to unwrap the plug around. And there, right by my finger, was a great big dirty wasp. Still alive, interestingly. Even though it's been in the conservatory and we've had multiple negative temperature overnights. That's Celsius for our American friends. Still alive. So it's not now, though.
Yeah.
Is it also 2-dimensional?
No, it's still 3-dimensional. And I can recommend Nifex Mini Cobra pliers. Ideal piece of EDC Yeah.
When you went to get more carpet cleaning fluid, did you go for the name brand or not?
If by name you mean Screwfix, yeah.
Ah, because often people go for the name brand and just think, this will have to do.
Ah.
God, I've been waiting to tell that joke all through that story.
That's a brilliant joke. That was, yeah.
Oh, very nice. This is why people tune in, I assume. Wasp stories and terrible puns.
Terrible jokes.
That is the hope, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. We hope that people tune in.
Oh, camera's back. That's better.
Okay. Well, it's because I switched to the other camera.
As I say, your shape has changed.
Yeah. Well, it's because you're technically viewing me through a different focal length now. I don't know what the focal length was on the camera on the actual monitor, but this is a 16 millimeter lens. So now you're viewing me in 16 millimeter land.
Good wide angle.
It is a relatively wide angle. I don't think I look particularly fisheye, but the 16 millimeter is actually probably the most used camera lens in my arsenal for filming, because my workshop is 2 millimeters. I've had a bit of a day. 2 meters wide. It's 2 meters wide, not 2 millimeters wide. Boy, howdy, I'd be real small. This would be a real Rick Moranis film sort of thing in that case. But no, 2 meters wide, which means that I can't really get very much distance in this length. Mm-hmm. So the 16 millimeter lens is crucial, is essential.
Are you on a full frame sensor or cropped sensor?
Oh, it is cropped. I wish it was full frame. It is not. I am still actually doing the overwhelming majority of my work on Canon M50. It's been a surprisingly useful bit of kit. Like the bang for your buck. Let's say the bang for your buck on it is very, very good because it's cheap. As cameras go, as mirrorless cameras go, it's not expensive, and it's got a wide range of lenses. This is not, I suppose, like the lens is not necessarily the cheapest, but the camera body is nothing fancy, nothing super expensive, but it works like a champ. And the fact that I can plug it into my laptop and use it as a webcam is nice. So yeah, no, it is not full frame. There is a full frame camera in the house now, though. Like, not mine. It doesn't belong to me, but I have the capacity to steal it on occasion. And I did do, actually, for my latest video. I absolutely did. I filmed that one in the juiciest of 4K. And I think you can tell. Like, oh, this footage is really crispy. Is this what filming on a 4,000-pound camera looks like? Don't tell me that. No, I actually really love my cheapy Canon M50s because they've worked well for a not big expenditure. I think is maybe a good way of putting it. So yeah, that's what you're looking at me now. The Canon M50 on a Sigma 16 millimeter lens.
Because my monitor. That's all great to me, but
what was that? Great to you?
This is all great to me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Sigma.
And also the fact that I know nothing about cameras. My dad was trying to tell me yesterday he's just bought some Sony thing. I hear they make cameras. Yeah, and he was telling me all of the things and like, camera. You seem happy. Good. Yay.
No, it's cameras are such a deep rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And whenever I feel like I've scratched at the surface a little bit and I'm like, oh yes, this is very interesting. And then I kind of like realize how far down it goes. And I'm like, I'm going to step away now.
You'll find James down there if you keep going. He's down there somewhere.
No, I know. Sometimes I hear him. Sometimes I hear him calling up from down the hole.
Hear the screams.
Yeah.
He's at least in 6 turtles deep.
Well, yeah, I can pick up 2 cameras within like these, and they're digital.
I'm shocked. I'm positively shocked. I know what you were capable of, James, with your camera, your camera stash.
Well, excitingly, I've bought some toxic chemicals from the US recently, so I'm going to expand my camera ability to be able to do tin type wet plate soon.
Nice.
Because no one in the UK would sell them to a not company. They're cadmium.
But you can ship them though, and that's fine.
You can.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. How in the hell did you convince the US and or UK to like be okay with this?
Turns out that it doesn't count as dangerous. It's toxic. Yeah, if you eat it, it's dangerous. It'll give you problems, but it's not inherently toxic to anyone handling it. As long as it's inside a container.
So it's no different to most of the stuff that goes through the FDA in the US, then.
Pretty much. Although I did find out that so collodion is the main component of tin type wet plate photographic medium, the stuff you put on the plate. I found out what it was. It's ether, a highly flammable liquid, alcohol, a delicious highly flammable liquid, and nitrocellulose, an early explosive.
Nice.
So this is this
cool.
is
Where are you going to store this?
Super safe.
Inside one of those fancy non-burnable cabinets with all of the other things, which does make me think
all of the other explosive things. That always fascinated me about these flammable cabinets. Right, let's put them all together.
But if anything happens
in a steel cabinet, which steel also burns if you get it hot enough.
Try hard enough,
really well.
I feel like it'll just be like in a cartoon where you get you can hear like the hissing sound, and then you get the poof, and then like the sides of it are all ballooned out, but everything else is fine. Like it's
either that or the whole thing just starts getting like redder and redder and redder, and then just falls through the floor. That's also possible and acceptable within cartoon rules. Cartoon physics. It can also shoot into the sky. It can shoot into the sky. That's fine too. Make a hole in the roof.
Yeah.
That's all totally fine. Actual bodily harm though is not.
Rockets, water boilers, and kosh cabinets are the things that go upwards.
No, absolutely. Well,
there's a reason that chemistry, if you have a science block in a school, generally the biologists will be on the ground floor, so they're near the ground and the pond and the dirt and the plants and stuff. The physicists will be on the second floor because you want the chemists on the top floor, so if anything blows up,
they don't take anyone with them.
It goes up.
Blows up. Yeah.
And the physicists are just
harmless. Totally harmless. We never do anything dangerous. Yeah. There's no dangerous things in physics.
No.
I mean, that's a very, very subjective phrase, I think, there, Andy, because I mean, there's a certain, podcast host.
As far as I know, only one physics teacher has ever been killed doing a demonstration of any sort.
In this country or anywhere?
In this country, in this country,
By contrast, the accidental.
I don't know what the rates are for the chemists and the biologists.
Said the magic words in French, and suddenly, oh no, zut alors.
There we go.
Surely it would be mad.
Well, the word we always had, like in our textbook, was chouette, which it was like, oh, chouette, cool. Which we asked our teacher eventually, and we said, look, what does chouette actually mean? Is it a thing that people say? And he's like, no, it means it's the UK equivalent might be like, or the English equivalent might be groovy.
Oh,
nice,
groovy. And it was like, yeah, no wonder the French exchange people looked at us very weirdly. Like, do you want to go
I don't think I've ever heard it. I don't think I've ever heard this word before. And I'm not exactly fluent in French, but I feel like I've been around a lot of French over the course of my life, and I've never heard this word uttered, like leave anyone's lips before.
Yeah, as Tom in the comments says, Geil is maybe the German, although I'm at least told on somewhat reliable grounds that is actually a thing people say. Unlike groovy.
Felix and Laura seem to say it most weeks.
Yeah, a lot.
But I think it is. You wouldn't be looked at in the same way if you went, Oh, and so we're going to reinstall this window. Groovy. Especially if you do the weird like accent and Fonz kickback at the same time.
The Fonz kickback is important.
It is.
So, like, the European languages all have the accented, kind of written words. The umlauts and all the other stuff that you have to do it with your shoulders to make it.
Yeah, which way? École.
I feel mildly left out not speaking any other European languages other than English.
Me neither, Ali.
A healthy dose of American.
Sorry? What was that, Jamie?
You got a healthy dose of American, though.
I feel like vocally speaking, I'm still 75% American and 25% English with a American accent.
Well, I was impressed earlier when you said 2 meters for the dimension of your room that you're in, rather
it's
than,
a 4 by 2
6
meter room.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what it is in feet. But see, that's the thing. Like anything that I originally learned in feet and inches is still in feet and inches. So like my height is like instinctively I think of it in feet and inches. So like I'd say I'm 5'9".
Well, we do that for most Brits outside of the medical world.
Sure. But like I know centimeters, but because I learned my height in feet and inches, it's in feet and inches. But because now I do a lot of things in millimeters and centimeters and meters and stuff, I think of the room as a 4 by 2 meter room and not whatever it is in feet and inches. And Jesus, when it comes to actual like making stuff, if you tell me something in inches, I might actually throw something at you because inches are the worst for, I feel like, precision. Actual precision. Like it's like, no, don't tell me it's 2 in 5/16 inches. That is a terrible number. And you need to go away and tell me what that is in millimeters or centimeters or anything that makes actual sense.
I've only so far had
decimal points only.
Like one actually sensible argument for anyone still using imperial as a general measurement for anything, and that is in the building trade for building houses out of wood. That's the only kind of vaguely sensible reason for still using feet and inches.
Yeah.
That's kind of because the timber industry hasn't moved over properly, though.
But it only because of the expansion, the rate of expansion of the material. You can just be to the nearest inch and it be in tolerance because there's enough of a tolerance over the course of a building. So, like in my industry that I work in, we work in either millimeters or meters. Never ever centimeters or decimeters or anything other than just millimeters and
all forms of
meters.
wood will forever be measured in inches, is what you're saying.
Well, this is the thing. So, like, if we're surveying a building, 50 mil tolerance is about right.
I'm enjoying the fact that both Andy and James very slowly smirked, whereas Duncan and Jamie maintained a very just kind of like, yes, we're talking about lumber here.
I was trying to decide, do we go down that route or do we talk about like the timber is 7 quarters?
I missed it completely.
No,
there was a very, very deliberately subtle cock joke in there.
I mean, I'm completely by when it comes to measurement. I'll use whatever's handy. The house I'm in was built in the 1950s. Everything
measured in hands
is measured in inches. Feet and inches. Yeah, the nooks at the end of the other side of the fireplace are 4 feet wide, and 12 inches deep. Yeah, they're a foot deep. So doing stuff in inches in the house makes sense. So when I go to Menshed, most of the guys there are significantly older than I am, and I'm old enough. So quite often, most of them they still use inches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll use what's most convenient as well. If I'm measuring a gap, and that gap happens to be 15 inches, and another gap might be 390 millimeters, and neither falls on a nice number for the other measurement, I'll use whichever one fits nicely.
See, that becomes
I am pro nice numbers. I'm pro nice numbers.
That's great until you're doing a site survey with someone who does that, and you're the person writing everything down, and you've drawn the thing out, and they then give you measurements with a trundle wheel in meters between like a roller shutter door, and then they get the tape measure out and then measure in inches or centimeters around the column, and then use the laser for the personnel door and then give you it in millimeters. So you get 3 or 4 completely different units of measurement, and then try and have to draw that up the following day.
Everyone's got shins. We can be kicked.
I am admittedly enjoying some of the additional measurement units we're getting in the chat. Like I did not know how big a furlong was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now I do, in a completely useless way that I won't remember, which is great.
The only time I've ever heard of a furlong is in horse racing.
Pretty much.
Wait, what's another
8 furlongs to a mile. So
a league
to a mile.
A league is definitely a very specific unit of measurement.
Yeah, leagues, chains, fathoms.
No, Jesus. These are nautical, right? League and fathom anyway.
No, a league is a land measurement.
Is it land?
It can be either.
40,000
distance, right?
Yeah, I think it's distance. I mean,
leagues can be either.
That's part of the book title.
Yeah. There are certain things that are kind of task specific, aren't there?
Yes.
They're like leagues under the sea is measuring horses. I mean, I've met a couple of vets, but horse people tend to talk about horses in hands, don't they?
Yeah, that was what was said in the chat as well.
Yeah, you cling on to it, don't you?
Yeah.
And people say
Klingons use light years.
Yeah, Kessel runs.
Very good. Yep.
Parsecs, isn't it?
Yep, parsecs.
Parsecs to do the Kessel run.
Yeah.
The thing is,
jewelry.
Well, I mean, there's different ways to think about that. Yeah. I mean, context is important. I mean, by training, I'm a physicist. So, everything was absolutely metric. Yeah, whether you're dealing with anything, whether you're dealing with something that's, at subatomic levels, whether you're dealing with something that's in, essentially, solar system and or above levels. It kind of, it's metric. If it's in science, it's metric. But I'm making stuff. If I'm doing stuff, I mean, I was brought up in. I'm old enough to be brought up in. I certainly was in primary school, and to a certain extent, early secondary school. Things like inches were mentioned, and the CGS system. Precursor to the SI system. Those things we were taught. I've still got textbooks that I used when I was in school for A-level physics that mention the CGS rather than SI system.
What is CGS?
Centimeters, grams, and seconds. So rather than using meters, kilograms, and seconds, which is what you get with the SI system. So essentially still metric, but actually it was still actually a slightly different system.
Also, I feel like seconds aren't metric or imperial.
They are based on.
They are now.
Metric,
They're now.
They're redefined. Also, like the inches redefined as a metric thing. So it reminds me of this question I had at an academic interview a long time ago now. That the question was, what can you measure? I thought, nice. Weight. Okay. Length. Volume. No. You've already said that. No, I haven't. I've only said 3 things. No, you said volume. That's length times length times length. And it's a really interesting. Sad me sits in the car and still thinks about this. I was 12 or 13 at the time, and
no,
at least the same amount later. I'm still thinking about what can you measure? So you end up going through, and you get to the point of energy, and they go, no, energy you can define as weight times length squared equals mc squared. And you're like, what can you measure? And so you end up getting down to the fundamental SI units. And only recently did I
7 of them.
Yeah. But then, and eventually I kind of got there and the interview finished, and I never thought, I'm now old enough to have thought, I think I said intelligence at the time, and we ended up going down a tangent of how do you measure intelligence? And things that you could measure, so worth, or like all of these non-scientific things, and 12-year-old me was very science focused, still am. You don't think of things that you can measure that aren't, friendship. Thanks, Tom.
I don't want to measure that though.
It's interesting. Like it's a fun. It's a sad, nerdy mind game to play. What can you measure? It's only second. My second favorite sad, nerdy mind game.
Oh well, you're gonna have to now.
Have we done this? Noun a noun and verb a verb. So certain things you can. So you can run a run. That makes sense. You can't park a park.
You can button a button.
I can try.
Yeah. You can board a board, which means that you get onto a piece of wood. And certain things have multiple meanings. You can tap and tap.
I feel like you're just getting into that area of where English is terrible and great at the same time.
Yeah, but is
very hard language to learn as a second language, I imagine.
If you look in this in the this game in the thesaurus, it's just how to confuse non-native speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How colloquial can you get with that?
Yes.
It's easy for you to say.
Yeah. Can you lamp a lamp?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only in British.
But it hurts your knuckles.
Yeah.
You can't do it in non-British English. And
I do feel like I find myself frequently verbing nouns that don't verb, but like I require them to verb.
That's a fun thing to Google.
Peopling is a good one.
Yeah, no, people is verb. Yes. Exactly.
Erasmus is one where there's buffalo. Yeah. Oh.
I think
the comments keep moving.
Yes.
I try and hide one and end up showing another one.
You miscapitalized it. I think it should be the second buffalo that's capitalized. Because this is the longest sentence of buffalo, and it's the idea that you can to buffalo something is to push it around, but it's not it doesn't really make sense to most people in the UK because it's not a word you'd ever used, and most people in the UK, if you said Buffalo as a place, you wouldn't know it's a place, or there is a place in New York called Buffalo. So there are the animal from the place being pushed around, and there's that's the kind of idea of buffalo, but it doesn't make any sense unless you happen to have grown up in a place where you use buffalo as a verb.
So
I think as well as go on, Ollie.
I was gonna say I actually get the joke being made about the poet she eating 10 stone lions because I know enough Mandarin to know that most of those words are some form, but they are obviously not said she, they're said sure. But yeah, that would be. I get the joke, and I felt like I was the only one who got the joke. I hate to call out the joke.
Oh yeah, that completely bypassed me. The only similar one I can think of is the UK version of buffalo blah 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 is the sign painter for the pub. So it's the dog and duck, or the whatever and whatever. So the sign painter is painting the sign on the pub, and the proprietor publican says, "Oh, the space between dog and duck is too large." Yeah, it's 5 ands in a row, and it does make sense.
Yeah,
but presumably only if you grow up in a place where people had pub signs, and it's always the cabbage and lettuce, or slug and crown.
The theory of pub names is absolutely one of words. There are no good words to describe this thing. That's how much it breaks my brain.
I think the only equivalent good one is you've got your pub names, and then you've got your hairdressers as well. You curl up and things like that.
Misnomer in the marsupial. That's good. I like that. That's a good pub name, actually. I'd go to that pub. I do like when they involve words that I'm not actually sure what they are. Like there's actually a pub near me called the Fox and Firkin, and I'm like, what's a firkin?
It's a unit of measurement.
A firkin is a unit. Jesus,
it is. You have accidentally looped back.
Gone full circle.
So going back to obscure things, so there are brewery barrels. Firkins are a subunit. There's however many quarts in a firkin, how many firkins in a barrel. So brewing barrel is a certain volume, and of course, much like gallons, there's a UK and US. So
don't even get me started on the gallons thing. Gallons, the different gallons, that one kills me every time.
I love the fact as well that you managed to stumble on that the perfect thing there with that pub name for the only person on the planet who would just know that off the top of his head.
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking that it was actually absurd that James here just happened to have the answer to that in like perfect form, just ready to go, locked and loaded. Firkin facts.
Hey, I told you my new podcast was the soft launch. Don't tell anyone.
I think we need the Firkin and Merkin, though. I think that would be a hilarious kind of juxtaposition of
dripping wet. Does that work for both? I don't know.
The Fox and the Merkin, that might be a different. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Fox and Merkin is definitely a different pub.
But normally when there's a Fox and a Firkin around the corner, there's normally a tap and a spile.
Secret codes.
More
brewing talk.
Say we missed. Since we have we have a majority here. That as I say, Andy and James, you were missed at Smurf, which was a lovely, delightful, wonderful event, which will hopefully happen again next.
Yeah, tell us more about Smurf. Yeah, because we haven't.
We haven't
little blue creatures with white hats.
Duncan, do you want to take this then, seeing as no one else is being serious?
You want to know about Smurf? Okay, so I'll do the quick sales pitch, which is that it's a festival for people who love 3D printing, and the SMRRF stands for the Sanjay Mortimer RepRap Festival. And Sanjay Mortimer was a much-loved founder of a company called E3D. Neurodivergent chap, was a big champion of anyone affected with mental health issues or difficulty learning, and was a big champion of that and getting people into engineering, and sadly he passed away
2 years ago now.
A year ago. No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. 2 years ago this month. And so
I believe I'm suddenly second guessing it, but I'm pretty sure it was 2, because you went to the charity event last year, right?
Did.
Yeah,
yes. So it was 2 years ago.
2 years, yeah.
You're right.
Which is crazy to think about because it doesn't feel that long ago. But it was 2 years.
And I think that everybody who knew who Sanjay was would be like, I just wanted to spend some time with him. Yeah. You could. He was one of those people that I think you could just talk to and for a long time, and just listen to him.
He was a lad.
Just listen to him. Yeah.
He was a lad.
But anyway, they had this RepRap festival for anyone who loves 3D printing. There was lots of people there, lots of content creators and 3D printing companies and community projects, and it was a massive
from the
nerd fest
world.
Yes.
Well, the RepRap part of Smurf, because so the SM is for Sanjay, but the RepRap, for folks who aren't familiar with that, comes from the very first fully open source 3D printer that was made by a mathematician in Bath named Adrian Boyer, who was there and did a talk, actually, which is really cool because he's one of us. He's based here in the UK, and RepRap Fests have been going on for years in the US. There's 4 or 5 of them, I think, at this point, and we've never had one here, even though the man who created the RepRap is here in the UK. So it was cool that we finally got one here. And he was. I'm sure he's been to them before. I can't imagine this is the first one he's been to, but this was obviously probably easier for him to get to than other ones. And his very, I think it's the original Einstein or Darwin. I think it's the one I think it's the Darwin is now in the Science Museum. I believe we saw it when we went to
We
visit.
did. Yeah.
I think so. I don't think I'm making that up. It's like, I think I have this memory and I'm pretty sure it's a real memory and not something that I just imagined in my head.
Wasn't the fever dream this time?
Not this time. But yeah, that's what the ERF stands for in Smurf. Is Rep Rap Fest, and it's very community. It's not like Form Next or some of the other like big additive manufacturing.
Yeah, it's not a trade show.
No, and it's not like a big industrial.
Festival's the right word.
Yeah,
festival's the right word. Yeah,
it's very community based, very much based. Kind of circling around like the open source part of 3D printing, which is not all of it, but is a reasonable chunk. And it was delightful.
So you're thinking not big conference hall, giant stands of people.
No. It was literally
where was it hosted?
The Oxford examination halls.
It was plastic tables, cheap tablecloths, and lots of very, very lovely nerdy folks just going, "Hey, I made this thing. Do you want to know about it?"
Yeah.
Or
more
hey,
village
look,
fate.
This is a cool thing. Yeah.
Oh, is that
village by appearance, but internationally attended.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, absolutely.
Lots of familiar faces from the interwebs.
Yep. Good old like 3D printing nerd Joel Telling showed up and did a whole bunch of interviewed a bunch of people and did a whole bunch of stuff. Trying to think of who else were some other big US. Zach Friedman was there. Admittedly, I feel as though he was, I was gonna say maybe shorter than I expected in that regard.
Tiny human.
I very much wanted to just kind of pick him up, shove him in a pocket, walk away, have him film the experience.
Everyone that I've seen in real life that I first saw on the internet is smaller than I expected.
That's fair.
You don't count.
Though, to be fair, I was also going around telling people that Duncan was taller than he actually is, because I may have mistaken how tall he is, and I was 100% telling people that he was 6'10".
What, that's smart.
Yeah.
6'10".
100%. I described you as being 6'10", and people absolutely believed me. But also, I think it is that thing that above a certain height, nobody knows. Nobody can. You're just tall. Nobody knows.
No.
Just big.
As avid listeners of Maker's Waffle, on the last group chat, you and another tool maker, Neil, revealed your height. Am I the only one that remembers that? Oh yeah,
probably.
Moving on.
Sorry, in a Notion notebook somewhere.
It's not. I just remember. These are the weird things my brain remembers. That and what a firkin is.
Yeah, no, this is incredibly useful.
You guys came away with some 3D scans as well, I believe.
Yeah,
we did.
You got your head done, yeah?
I haven't printed mine yet.
Just to go full Blue Peter, here's one I was earlier.
Oh!
Of course, terribly in the light.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awful.
Better for the audio listeners, Jamie's.
Oh, that's better.
3D printed bust of himself that appears to be about 2 inches high and about
and it's
6 centimeters wide.
Me further back and that further forward.
Your beard is great.
No, the problem was with the scan. It basically dropped off the wispy bits where there was obviously not enough data.
That's really interesting.
But it is surprisingly me.
Yeah, it's
I kind of want to find someone to sort of fix mine up.
I've been chatting to a couple of people because that's what I wanted to do as well.
I like having the original one, but to have one that where the hair's a bit better fixed, and I had a hoodie on with tails hanging off, and one of them just ends in midair and stuff like that, where it's quite a slim thing with the laces. And yeah, it'd be nice to have that sort of fixed up a bit. If someone
I've got a couple of artifacts on the top of my head as well. So
yeah, things like that. Yeah.
Not to be that guy, but it was actually in the last Maker's Waffle we talked about who in the community would do that. Just to letting everyone know, I did listen. He's also in the
chat. He has also decimated my model and sent it back to his sensible, useful size as well.
Well,
so yes, very much.
Cheers. Thank you, future museum owner. You know who you are, and I'm going to force people to go and listen to that episode.
Yes.
Perfect.
If you've forgotten who it was. But re-listen.
Lord's work.
Stop giving it away in the comments.
I listened last week. I was here.
Oh my goodness. But no, it was a really fun event. I think it was a lot more like joyful than I would have expected, and I was exceptionally fortunate because I had the biggest and best team of people there with me. Bigger than maybe anyone else there.
The Cat's crew.
And they had matching t-shirts.
Yeah.
They had matching t-shirts that identified them as the Cat's crew. Big shout out to Eric Cedarberg for throwing that together like in literal days.
That was epic. Yeah.
I was absolutely floored by just to be that guy and to embarrass people live on a podcast. I was gonna say I cannot speak highly enough of how incredibly amazing my friends who happen to also be my team are. The Duncans, the Jamies, the Billies, the Erics. Like I was absolutely blown away, and like Jamie kept me fed, of which I absolutely would not have done on my own because I just did not stop talking pretty much the entire time. And like Duncan fetching me coffee and Billy just generally being the most delightful and helpful all the time in spite of not always feeling the best, and like Eric driving back and forth. Like, yeah, no, seriously, I am the luckiest person on the planet, and I got to see it so clearly that weekend that I was just like, damn, all right, this is I'm storing this one away. Like I'm definitely storing this one away.
I think the only people that had a rival crew were kind of like the Voron team, the E3D team,
and and E3D were literally running the event. So like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much. It was nuts. There was people there with much bigger booths than I had who had less people or no people. I'm pretty sure James Bruton was just flying solo as he tends to do. And he had the enormous table with all the stuff on it. And it's just him. So
it just swaps the batteries out. It's fine.
They carry each other out, actually. Like they transport each other. They form like a chain of robots and they just kind of like move themselves out. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. But no, it was great. And I think even though I didn't get a commemorative photo, which I will probably kick myself for until I may rectify this, I did actually meet Adrian Boyer. Like I got to meet him. I get to shake his hand. I got to thank him in person for all of the stuff that he's done. He told me nice things, which of course made my head explode. And then I didn't get a selfie with him. So yeah.
Next year.
I was gonna say if I don't next year, then somebody needs to kick me in the face because this is a bit much.
I'll add it to the Maker event calendar. You know, there's Maker Central.
Kick Ali in the face.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Every other year, there's the one in the field. Yeah.
Yes, which I believe is actually next year. I believe 2024 is going to be electromagnetic field.
Yeah, like a week after Maker Central as well.
Yeah, that's the sort of problem. Is it's all gone a bit mushy and
why? It's all the same people. Surely they know. Surely they know better.
What we need is some.
I think it's a crossover of people. I don't think it's necessarily all the same people. I think it's
you're right. It's not all the same people. Like because as we've seen, Maker Central definitely leans more heavily towards like the physical, like very. I'm like trying to think of a better way.
It started out with the woodturners.
Yes,
craft.
But it's wood, it's metal, it's a lot more of like, I guess, like the older physical crafts, the handmade crafts. Hey, there's Eric.
Almost like people's surnames: Smiths, Fullers, Turners.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, like, you absolutely get other people doing other things at Maker Central, but it is still, I think, overwhelmingly that sort of stuff. Whereas like electromagnetic field is obviously going to lean more into the like electronics and like kind of the tech, I think, side of things, which again, there's big overlap between these things. And electromagnetic field, as I have come to understand it, I've never actually been, is not solely electronics and stuff like that. It's just a lot of that. So yeah, it's not complete overlap. In fact, actually, I think I have a tendency to think that because I overlap so heavily with so many groups that everyone does. And then I realize that most people actually know how to like do one thing and just that thing and not try to do everything.
What?
Weird neurotypical.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, as I say, I don't know if any of them are here.
What sort of madness is that?
In this room right now, but like I hear this is a thing. I hear this is a thing where people like they like choose a thing and then they just do that thing and they do it really well. Potentially,
and wow.
There was a.
I'm sorry.
Sounds like sci-fi to me.
A coaching event, and I was at for a work thing, and they were like, remember that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. I was like, no, I can.
Yeah. But watch me. me. like I will do the thing if you say it. Yeah, exactly. If you say it enough times, like Beetlejuice.
I've already brought all the stuff for it.
Exactly.
Are you going to do it? No, that's not the point.
Yeah. It's that kind of embracing that, embracing the chaos and the kind of procrastination on purpose, isn't it? Is if you pick a thing that you don't want to do, then you can cast that aside, and then you're not technically doing everything. You're doing everything bar this thing, so then it's achievable.
I have very little interest in doing sport.
Yeah.
See,
there you go.
That's a thing.
But you do weightlifting.
Yeah. I do.
but you could also even the world of making. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, do any of you do tatting, for example?
What is it?
Collect tatting.
Well, if you don't even know what tatting is, you're obviously not doing it. So you're not doing everything. So you don't need to worry.
But
is this a disparaging phrase from Yorkshire?
Scottish fabric.
It is a fabric. It's a needlework.
Okay. Yeah, I will admit that I think that sort of like the needlework type things interest me less, but partially because I've already done them.
I actively can't knit or crochet, but I can sew. So that's my kind of like, if I leave those two out, then I can happily, safely try and tackle everything else.
I just like the idea of you passively knitting. Oh, damn, a jumper's appeared.
No, like I know I could learn it, but if I choose not to learn it, then I can choose to learn all of the other things.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. The time.
Just going back to Smurf for a moment. What was the obviously apart from meeting the people, because people is the main reason I think most people go to. Well, certainly a lot of us go to kind of maker events, but not thinking about the people, because you've already extolled the virtues of all the amazing people that were there, some of the amazing people that were there, but thinking more about the things and stuff that was there. What was the kind of standout thing or stuff or object?
I personally always really
have
like
a personal one.
Yeah. Go, Duncan, go.
It's very it's the real nerd end of it though, right? Okay, just a warning. So Jamie knows what I'm going to say already, but it was 100%. seeing the Full Control G-Code guys. And Andy Gleedle, who is a professor who started that project. I got in touch with him probably close to 3 years ago now, something like that.
You contributed to the project, didn't you?
When Full Control first sort of kicked off, and just briefly what it is, you can create G-code not using a slicer. It's probably the briefest way to put it. But it started out as a tool in Excel, and it was written in macros, Excel macros, VBA, which I know well. And I was like, hey, can I help? I want to do something. And that never really kind of worked out because they'd already started on the next iteration of it, which was in Python. But I've met Andy twice now, and seeing all the stuff they had there, they had all the demonstration prints. He had a few students with him.
There's some amazing
and
stuff.
Just their sort of passion for it. The whole project came out of sort of bioscience and needing to print skeletons and meshes to grow stuff on, or filters.
Those meshes are unbelievable.
They were insane. Like these really fine ceramic meshes. Yeah, that whole project is amazing. I love it. I wish I used it more. I feel like I'm missing a lot of maths to really make use of it. But it's a great project, and yeah, it was really nice to go and just nerd out. I was there for about an hour, I think, just picking at stuff and looking at all the things and talking to the students, and yeah, it was good.
That's exactly it. Because obviously I got to nerd out with you for a little bit when you took me over there, and kind of chatting with Andy and stuff. And then the following day I got to then nerd out again. I'd wandered around with Billy, and then Billy was like heavily nerding out with the students, so I got to like double nerd out.
Double nerd. Better than single nerd.
Yeah, it was
thicker.
Very, very cool. But that seems to be a bit of a hub.
Just to look back, why? So playing devil's advocate, like, what is the if you're someone who is not in the 3D printing space, you kind of understand that you create a model or download a model, put it into a program, the slicer, and it spits out machine language, the 3D printer machines into reality. How is this? What does this add?
It can do things that slicers cannot usually do. Extraordinary things, gravity-defying things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So G-code's been around for decades, right? It comes from the world of CNC machines. And slicers are what chops up a 3D model into something that a 3D printer can use. It's effectively 2.5D printing because you're printing one layer at a time and then moving up. There's more 4-axis and 5-axis stuff coming, but full control G-code lets you write G-code. Oh, how can I phrase it would make sense to someone that doesn't 3D print things?
It
lets you write G-code programmatically in a methodical way without having any 3D model. So you're just spitting out G-code on its own with no model.
Like making a mesh, like creating a 3D filter. So if you've got a syringe and you want to have a cap for your syringe that filters something out, you could use this to say, right, I want you to create lines that are, thinner than the slicer. You stop them joining together. I want it to be a 3D matrix of this pattern, and I want you to say, I'm going to put in value X, which is my particle size, and I don't want you to let through that. So create G-code for this filter.
Yeah.
So
that type of theoretical idea,
based off of their website, because I've pulled it up now. Like Full Control lets you do non-planar printing. So again, printing actually properly 3D. Continuous print paths that would ordinarily not be possible.
So non-planar being you could get it to drive around the outside of a hemisphere in one continuous print rather than do the bottom bit and next layer up. You can get it to go over the top and create no layer lines.
Correct. Basically you can. It is. I think the main thing here is that it does give you full actual 3D printing. It does let you print in the third dimension, in the Z depth, and not just the X and Y, and then moving up in the Z depth. and the examples of the stuff that they've created are, you can see very quickly where this can do things that normal slicers can't. But also, it also lets you do procedural things that I think would ordinarily be much more complicated. And the thing is that it's also just, at this point, it's free software. Like, I think for a while it wasn't this robust, and now it is. And that is really awesome. They've done an extraordinary amount of work on this, and it's just stunning. I've not actually really used it myself simply because time seems to vex me. But as I say, their stuff there was also probably one of my favorite things at Smurf. It's so cool. And when you actually get to see the physical objects they printed, like being able to print effectively like lattice meshes that are incredibly small.
That is exactly the thing for me. Seeing, like, being handed that mesh and like looking up at the light and then them explaining what that was.
Because
just ridiculous.
They took advantage of multi-material printing to do it, and so they were able to create a mesh that has open, that is incredibly clean and well made. Like, it doesn't have artifacts, or it's not messy. Like, it's perfect. But also the spacing is less than 0.4 millimeters because of the orientation which they printed it with. They're not restricted by the nozzle width the same way we are with our regular humdrum slicer printing. It's very much kind of magic. It feels like fantasy 3D printing, but it's not. It's real. It's very much real.
I suppose the kind of the almost like the analog for non 3D printer people is the difference between like getting a cocktail in a can from a supermarket as like your normal 3D print through a slicer. Like, it's still the cocktail, it still tastes like the cocktail, it's fine. And then going to a proper cocktail bar with someone who knows how to make the cocktail from the raw ingredients.
But also, like, it's not necessarily you're going to replace your cocktail.
Both are perfectly fine things. Yeah, one is convenience, one is just you can have the thing.
Convenience.
I don't know, because I'm going to argue with your analogy. Sorry, but the result is completely different. The result is a completely different thing. It's it's in the name. You have full control over the process. There's no automation behind it doing tricks for you to try and help you along. You are responsible for the output yourself.
Like the magical
and what it can do is very different to what a slicer can do.
It thinks about it in a different way. So if you've never 3D printed something before, you take a sphere, take something with an overhang, and someone who's done 3D printing will say, no, you can't have that, or you have to add supports because you can only do one layer at a time and it builds on top of each one. This almost says, well, why do we have to? Can't we do something else? Why do things have to be exactly the same on each one? Couldn't we just, if you had full control over each motor, couldn't you do this? And that's exactly what it is my summary takeaway as someone who doesn't actually know what it is.
Yeah, so if you wanted to print a sphere with a slicer, you'd model the sphere first, then put it through the slicer. Then the slicer would decide, based on the exterior mesh of that sphere, of what to output and how to fill in the solid. Whereas in full control, you're deciding the path for that sphere by using trigonometry, right? You're creating the path yourself.
And presumably you can do smart things like say, actually we want to do this with polar coordinates rather than Cartesian, and make the maths easier.
Yeah, exactly that.
It's basically direct control of the tool head, isn't it, essentially?
They should call it that. Direct control. Really obvious.
Let's see here.
So do you need a special 3D printer for this? Or is this something that would work on just any 3D printer?
Any printer, yeah. So what it outputs is you're outputting G-code, which is any printer can read that unless it's some horrific proprietary machine.
got a few of
So
those.
what is G code? What does it look like? What is it telling the machine to do?
It's the same thing you get from the slicer. It's the exact same thing you get from the slicer.
It's
like
movements, speeds, temperatures,
line by
fan
line,
speeds, accelerations. Yeah. Line by line, one line at a time.
This motor do this. This other motor do this. Next line.
So like I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like I think G1 is a movement. So you'd have G1 and then X coordinate, Y coordinate, Z coordinate, and that's a movement command to tell it to go to those coordinates. And so one G code file is going to be tens of thousands of lines, because each movement is going to be a command, and then E is a extruder. So like you'll have the coordinate in E, which will be telling it how much to extrude. And then there's ways that temperatures get set, and so I actually maybe this is a good example, extremely simple example. When I've done multi-material prints with just filament swaps, because I don't have an MMU and I've wanted to use actual different materials, there is no way in Prusa Slicer that you can change temperature midstream. Like there's a way that you can change color, like Prusa printers or Prusa Slicer will happily give you, like, it has a shortcut for putting in like a filament change. Works great. I use it all the time, but it does not include a change in temperature. So you have to add in custom G code to do that. But it is as simple as basically inputting, I think it's M109 is the command. If I'm not, it's on M106 or M109. I can't remember off the top of my head. But like the thing is that the Marlin web page has literally every G code command in it, so it's pretty easy to look up what you would need. I insert literally one line of G code that says at this layer, change the temperature to whatever I set it to, and then it will. And then it keeps going. So like that's incredibly simple, very, very simple, like G code alteration just to get it to change temperatures part way. You can full control obviously takes this like to a way crazier level and doing much more wild things along, controlling extrusion and traveling in different directions and stuff like that, because the algorithms built into our slicers, whether you use Prusa Slicer, Bamboo Slicer, Cura, or anything, they all just have something pre-built to generate this stuff, which is why it does it on the click of a button, with very little thought or input from you, the user. It does things a certain way, which is why sometimes also you get weird things. Like, because I know sometimes like I'll be printing something and I'll notice that like it's just doing like an interesting thing in like the corner, and the corner is coming out a bit weird, and there's no setting I can change in the slicer to change that. Like it is something that is being programmatically generated behind the scenes, and full control it eliminates that bit, I guess. Like it's there's no algorithm figuring it out for you. You're doing all the figuring.
You are the algorithm almost, yeah.
Yeah, you are the algorithm. Exactly.
So what's in a slicer that will decide where a printhead goes? It's something that's been written by Prusa or the Cura developers or something like that. It's their algorithm, their way of interpreting a model. In full control, you have access to that. You are the one that decides where it goes. So you could probably write a slicer in full control.
Yeah. I mean,
if you were insane, but
yeah. No, I was going to say, I'm not
very clever.
Heavily masochistic.
But in theory.
But in theory, you could do that.
I tried to link to the full control sample page, but for some reason it's not letting me comment. So someone else is going to have to do it.
Show notes.
Full control.xyz.
Yep, full control.xyz, and it will give you some visuals, give you an idea of where this can do things that most slicers can't. Like basically print in midair. or again, print upwards in a straight line, which is not something that you would usually be able to do. But is clearly entirely possible. So that is the thing. Like 3D printers, FDM 3D printers. Like let's be clear here. We're being
Neil mentioned the resin.
Yeah, we keep saying 3D printers when we should, like, we're specifically talking about FDM, resin 3D printers, and all other 3D printers work a little bit differently, and this doesn't
clean 3D printers. We'll go with
the hot for the non 3D printing nerd, the hot glue moving around.
Hot glue moving around, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's it. Actually, like
big rolls of plastic.
That's kind of like the point I was trying to get to, is that when it comes down to it, they're relatively simple machines that have a bunch of really beautiful, complex, like, things tacked on to make them produce a thing of quality. But at the end of the day, they are an XYZ motion control system with stepper motors and a tool head with a hot bit and some gears. Like, gears push plastic into hot bit go melty, push out tiny string of plastic. Like, it is hot glue. It's a hot glue gun. The
G-code file is essentially just a list of instructions that tell the person holding the glue gun when to move the hand left or right or up, and then when to pull the trigger.
Yeah, and when to squeeze
the glue out. Yeah,
they're beautifully complex, simple machines, so they can do things that we don't always, I think, realize that they can do, because most of us are reliant on the slicer. We are reliant on what the slicer spits out, because we aren't writing our own G code. But it's great, like, that somebody basically went, well, but what if I did? But what if I told it to print up in a straight line? Would it do that? And the answer was, yeah, actually, it can. It will. It just doesn't typically do that. It's a non-standard command. But, like, the non-planar stuff, like, especially when, like, you'll see it going, like, in printing kind of like this,
like a curve up and down.
Yeah, like almost like a sine wave sort of shape, and it's doing this as a smooth motion, and you were just watching it going, yeah, all right, I didn't realize my printer could do that.
Showing off now. Yeah,
because like Duncan said earlier, like, G code is a fairly universal, step between your, like, computer and your CNC machine, whether that is a Haas 5-axis metal cutting thing that can do full motion interpolation and curves, and works in all of these interesting ways. And that's why 3D printing is a really good gateway drug into CNC.
Yeah, because it's actually kind of the same sort of stuff with just a cutty thing instead of a spitty thing.
Yeah.
And your laser cutter, your average laser cutter will use the same thing as well.
Yeah, it's great in that regard. I think it's really wonderful in that regard, and I think it makes those other things less scary too. Like, I think when you start with one and you realize it's like, oh wait, a CNC machine also takes G code, that makes the CNC machine suddenly less scary.
Because 3D printing is additive, whereas the other two are subtractive manufacturing.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I mean, admittedly, the only CNC I've used is arguably a very not terribly fancy one. Basically, it's a full motion. It's a three-axis motion machine with a router, in a tool head. So, like,
gateway CNC.
Well, it was an ooze nest. It was an ooze nest workbee, which is legit. But all the same, the G code was not actually controlling the drill bit at all. Like, we literally turned that on with a separate switch, and then we would send the G code, and the G code would start. So the G code was literally only doing the movement controls, was not controlling the I guess, like, the output at all. It wasn't controlling, at least as far as I know, I don't believe it was controlling the actual speed.
Control the speed of the router, no.
Yeah, like
it's essentially
speed of
it
movement.
can, but just not on a low cost machine.
Yeah, not on that.
Use nest it's basically the end of 3 of CNCs, isn't it?
I'm just giant,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's but obviously in a fancier CNC, yes, it's going to be able to control the tool head more precisely. But yeah, at the end of the day, in this case, it literally was just a router with a bit, that again was we could control it from the router, but not from the G code. And the G code was just telling it how to move around, and then it did the thing, and it cut the stuff, and everyone was happy.
But there are rabbit holes you can go down. You can, like I was going to say earlier, like Duncan, you have built a 3D printer, I believe.
I have, yeah.
And you can go down how you construct the motion axes, so like how you get it to move left and right and up and down. Do you have a left-right motor, an up-down motor, and whichever of the other one, or no? Do you do?
We like to make it more complex than that.
Yeah, you can go
diagonal left down.
Isn't that interesting?
Exactly, yeah.
Or you can go down the other route and you can look into the algorithm, the post processors. And I know that WorkBee released, so Duet is a control board that's often in 3D.
Who were there, I believe, at
yeah, they were.
They did cool stuff too.
And they take G code and turn it into electrons to fire at motors, and that's what that board does. But you could go down there like, I'm really interested in post processors. You could get Fusion 360 and turn these for non-additive work, so for not 3D printers, so for lasers, which are kind of slightly different. Yeah, that's on and off. That's power levels, or like cutting away stuff, and that's possibly with modulation for router spindle control or whatever. But you can, if you want to get into CNC as an idea, a 3D printer is a really good way to do that, because it gives you an idea of like, what is M109, M2? So what is this weird like text file that is being created that I opened by accident? And suddenly, actually, it's not that scary.
People add stuff to it too. It seems like I don't think it's a static thing. I think M600 didn't always exist, and then somebody decided to make M600 a filament change. Which is basically
Marlin added a load of stuff.
Yeah.
And then Duet have added a load of stuff as well.
Yeah.
So like the G codes, the actual ones that start with a G are all pretty standard. But the M stuff is all like machine commands. So that's like your temperatures, fans, spindle speed, stuff like that. And those are all pretty unique to each firmware. There's a few common ones. I think there's some kind of NIST standard as well. I'm not sure, but yeah, they vary.
And even then you can get into even further into the woods with macros. So within your G code, you can put a line that says, do the tool change, please. Or M to do the tool change, please. And then it pulls up a separate file, but that only works.
Is that in brackets or in quotes to do the tool change, please?
Curly brackets, ampersand, tilde, forward backslash.
Do the
interrobang.
And and don't forget the interrobang. That's very important. No, it's great. And honestly, to kind of go back to your point, James, 3D printing is a really, really great way to get into this stuff, because I didn't know jack and diddly about G code before I got into 3D printing. And then like at some point I reached that moment where it's like, it's time to learn. It's time to start learning about G code. Like I've done everything that I can with 3D printing without knowing anything about it, and now I need to know. So I did. So I learned, and now I know stuff. It's a wonderful way to get into that.
Yeah. And just to be clear, you don't have to. If you want to have a 3D printer, especially with the current market of things, you can buy a tool that you just
more than ever.
And that's exactly what's happened in my life in the last week or so, because I got my new tool, and then the guy who came around to he did our windows and doors and built our extension on the back and things. I've done some 3D printing for him, and he's kind of been saying, I should do this, I should have a go at this at some point. And he popped around to have a look at the leak in our conservatory the other day, and I just happened to have the X1 Carbon running, and he had a look at it and then said, "Ooh, it's quite nice." And then he sent me a WhatsApp earlier on with his P1S that's just arrived. He says, "This arrived this afternoon," and I could already see a print on the bed.
It
was the P1S or the P1P, the one with the plastic sides.
It's come absolute leaps and bounds in a very short period of time. I'm still not entirely sure we're at a point of it being like a mobile phone or a computer in terms of like usability. I still think that there is that inevitable moment where a thing is gonna go a bit hairy and go a bit and break a little bit, and you're gonna need to do some machine maintenance, even with the newer models that present themselves as being like, I just work. But the thing with all 3D printers is they all just work until they don't. and then you gotta fix the thing.
I mean, how long has the automobile been out? And that's kind of not a particularly new invention, but it's still the same thing. They all still need maintenance, and
and they still flaming break.
2D printers.
Oh
God!
I mean, like that's the analogy, isn't it?
Why?
I think it was Neil who said, like, is a 3D printer now less hassle than a 2D printer?
Yes. Yeah. By a long way. Yes,
If only because you can actually fix the 3D printer.
Yeah, actually, it's probably because they're still quite simple, right? So also, they are fixable and maintainable.
Stuff though too has made it possible to actually like learn how to take your machine apart and fix it. I don't know how to take apart my 2D printer. Like I can't find that information anywhere. If I take that apart, that's never going back together again. Like it's very much they don't want you to fix that. They want you to go out and buy a new one. Whereas like with the 3D printer,
so there's the thought.
Just pulls the lever on his to open his 2D printer.
Are we going to see
from the 70s? It's a classic design. Yeah.
But are we going to see either
cast iron
3D printing? As we print, most people think of the printer, the thing that most people have at home or have just a little box. They pay somewhere between kind of £30 and £180 for. And they put paper in, maybe it's a scanner as well. And it's a fairly simple thing. But the world of printers, if you've ever dived into that, gets a lot more complicated, a lot more expensive, a lot more fancy, etc. Now, are we going to see, perhaps in the 3D printing world, the cost plummet to the point where people won't bother to repair machines beyond kind of changing the nozzle or snapping on a new hot end, which comes as a one-piece unit. Like with a 3D print, like with a 2D printer, where you kind of you have to clear ink out, or you may have to clean the heads. It'll become something that's fully, just it's menu driven. It's clogged, right? Okay, there's a button on the menu, declog the head, and it will automatically do it. If it's too bad, you'll ditch it out. Or
I think it'll go that way.
And it may be an and/or, will we start to see actually a profession of 3D printer fixer in the similar manner that we used to have with TVs. So
that already exists on a commercial scene, right? 3D. We're talking about 3D printing as in people at home 3D printing. Right? 3D printing's been a thing for decades already.
Yep.
And there are 3D printing technicians. There has to be.
Oh yeah,
because there are these big commercial machines, and they all need looking after.
And if you have,
I think it will.
I'm thinking about the home user now, and rather than
I think it will inevitably go the way of this is a box that you just buy, and you can produce a 3-dimensional object out of that box without having to know anything about how it works.
And there's so many manufacturers that have tried that.
It will come eventually. I think Bamboo Labs made a big step in usability, which was absolutely necessary. And I think it will go even further. It might take 20 years, but more.
I'd say
think of machines that have been around for ages. And sorry, Andy, like Erica's had 2 really good comments. One about G-code for CNC lathes, and I wanted to talk about Tormec's like conversational interface, but it's another podcast. I was going to say sewing machines. Tormec's conversational thing is basically writes G-code from like put in this thing and turn apart, and it's quite nice. It's the Mac of machines. Don't shoot me.
How very dare you?
But like sewing machines. So sewing machines used to be a thing that you would repair, and they were quite simple. And now there's kind of 2 tiers. There are the like, this is my expensive Bonina, I will send to somebody to get fixed, and then there's this is my. I'm not going to pick a brand because it'll be mean. Yeah, you can.
We have a John Lewis sewing machine in the house that was a gift.
Yeah,
that is
no name. This is
when it dies in another one.
Not even just no name. Again, I literally have a 300-pound Genome, and Genome is a well-known brand of sewing machine, and I still don't know what's wrong with it right now. And I have taken it apart and gone, what am I looking at? And like literally Google, nothing, no information, nada. Can't get a manual for it because it's too old now. They just don't exist anymore. And so I was just kind of like, I'm just going to dust this off, get all the junk out, and put it back together because I have no idea what I'm actually looking at.
What you frankly, either need is someone who's like a grandmother or someone like Ellen who will just kind of look at it and go, tweak this.
Everyone needs an Ellen. Everyone needs an Ellen.
True. Although you have done step one of her usual troubleshooting, which is open it and clean it. Yeah. Sewing machines are amazing, but they are, dust.
Oh, they didn't fix it in this case. That did not, unfortunately, fix my problem, which is skipped stitches, which is a killer. It's very hard to sew a thing when it's only sewing every couple of stitches. But the thing is that, the cost to get it fixed professionally would potentially be enough to just replace it because it isn't an expensive machine. Yeah. And I do find that frustrating.
You get to that point. And you get to that with everything. Yeah. Well, there you go. Eric said it again.
Yeah. I still agree with Eric.
You've got to charge that point with cost per hour, and a sub €200 pound dollar machine, you're going to reach that cost quite quickly.
Yeah. So it's
if you've got
entirely makes sense.
If you've got a £5,000 industrial microwave in a commercial kitchen, you're going to have someone come out and fix it, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a 50 quid Argos microwave in your kitchen and it goes pop, going in the bin, right?
Yep.
It's different.
I mean, perfect thing with looping back to 2D printers. Back when I had my IT business and stuff, so we're looking, 15 years ago. Lexmark, you could go into PC World, you could buy a Lexmark printer for £30. It would come with 2 cartridges. You'd put the cartridges in, that would prime the heads. That gave you about 3/4 of a cartridge to print with. When you need to replace those cartridges, it was 60 quid. So people would then bin the printer and buy another 30 quid Lexmark that had the 2 cartridges in it.
Which is admittedly, I was gonna say, this is a whole other conversation about like there is the what is likely to happen and there is the what should happen. And these are not the same things, because whilst what's likely to happen is we potentially, we end out in a place where 3D printers are a little bit like 2D printers in that they're cheap enough that you buy one. Again, like Eric was saying, like we kind of already have this a little bit with like Ender 3s and stuff like that, because you can get, if I'm not mistaken, an Ender 3 for like $100 US now. And it might work fine for a little while, but then before too long you are going to run into issues, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to spend money to fix them. So they just get put in a corner, used for parts or something like that. And I don't want to see us go in a direction where you can buy a 60-70 pound 3D printer that people use for 7-8 months printing stuff and then throw away the second they stop working. That would suck. That would be more of a problem that is already existing. But
I'm going down that rabbit hole then. We've heard from Duncan and his big takeaway from Smurf. So, Jamie, what was your kind of
back to 40 minutes ago?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much the same thing though. That was the standout for me. It was like 3D printers are 3D printers are 3D printers. I was looking at a Voron that a guy was inside fixing.
It's big.
It was
big, boy.
Yeah, I mean, it had a 600 by 600 bed on it. So to fix the printer, the guy was inside the enclosure.
What units, please?
Sensible millimeters. But the guy was inside the printer, inside the enclosure, fixing the thing. Like his entire body was inside the printer. It was a big.
It was IDEX as well.
So 8 hands.
Cool heads.
Duncan hands or James hands?
Yeah, good point.
you know, but that, or then you had like you know, Construct 3D with the funky witchcraft printers, and like all of the other, you had an array of 3D printers that were cool and interesting, and like, oh, this has got this thing on it, or this has got wooden sides, or this has got 2 heads on it, or this is printing a funky thing. That was all great to wander around. But then when you've got those few little things that just pull you in, and you go, no, surely not. What the, you know, it's that kind of like picking stuff up, the tactility of, you know, being handed a thing, expecting it to be 2 grams of plastic, and it's actually 50 grams of ceramic, you know, things like that, of like those kind of things that just break your brain.
Well, you just pick up, and the only thing you can say is "Shwet cool."
I mean, there was a company there that were doing loads of stuff like printing onto fabrics, and they had an array of really, really weird stuff. They were part of a university
that was the University of Manchester, I believe.
Yeah, and they had like schemes to bring people in to do stuff. So they had like a swatch book of fabrics that had different materials printed into the fabrics. And then they had the kind of HP's powder jet witchcraft thing with parts that were full colored 3D powder prints in a thing. That again, it's just witchcraft. So stuff that goes outside of your normal understanding. Like, I understand how to put to 3D model something, put it into a slicer, and then print it out. I don't understand the maths of full control. Like, I understand, you know, kind of standing next to Duncan with his 3D printed hoodie, going, I know how this works. But then this other thing that I'm being handed, I'm like, I don't understand this. This is now cool, because it's not a thing I can just look at and figure out straight away. It's like
indistinguishable from magic.
Exactly that. So I'm holding some kind of magic in my hand because it is beyond my scope of understanding.
Yeah. No, it's pretty awesome. I really like that booth as well. The University of Manchester research stuff is very cool.
Ali, any other kind of booth stuff, things from you other than
I was gonna say, in addition to these ones, there was another student work. Again, a research. Basically, it was the research stuff that interested me. I was a lot less interested in the Vorons, and even like getting to see the Prusa XL was cool, but like I already know what that is, so like yeah. But no, there was these two guys, and they had been doing a bunch of work around effectively being able to 3D print copper traces that actually work well, as opposed to like the current conductive filament, which only kind of works, but the impedance is so high that it's just like it's not great. But this was like proper like copper traces being 3D printed onto just like kind of regular 3D printed plastics, and then built circuits with it. And that was cool. That came out. It looked like they were still early stages with it, and everything was somewhat small, but like you could tell it was copper by looking at it. Like it looked like copper, which was cool.
And to add to the coolness, they were doing it on 5-axis as well.
Yes, they were. I thought so, because like they were definitely getting some like non-planar shapes and stuff like that. And at the time, I was just kind of like, ooh, copper, and not really paying attention to the non-planar bit. But yeah, they were doing it with the 5-axis, so they were getting some real funky shapes and stuff. But then they had ones that they literally just like installed little Adafruit chips, boards into and stuff like that to make do a thing. And they worked. They were fully functional. And that was cool. But they were also just like I'm not trying to infantilize them, but they were kids. Like they had to have been in their like early 20s, and they were doing this amazing stuff. And it was just like, this is what I enjoy about this sort of thing. Like I enjoyed getting to see people's work again, like other content creators and stuff like that. There was a Polish organization composed entirely of blind individuals who were.
I was just about to shout them out.
Around, like 3D.
They were phenomenal.
The blind, and like they immediately blew out of the water any work that I've ever done on the topic, because obviously they got skin in the game. There goes my camera.
They had like they had things that were they were doing things like for board games and 3D printing Braille in the same way that Ali has, but then in other ways
arguably
as well.
better.
So yeah, they had loads of things that were, sensory things that just aren't being made anywhere, but then could very easily be made. Interactive 3D board games that don't rely on things like printed cards, and printing out maps and things, and loads of really, really interesting accessibility kit. That was, again, it was just
I think for me, that's one of the really amazing things about 3D printing is the fact that you can get a market exists for items, but it's only a small market. So a lot of manufacturers won't tackle it. If they do tackle it, for anyone that's ever known people who are need mobility aids or aids for living, the costs of some of those things are ridiculous if you take into consideration the amount of material. And typically it's a function of two things. One, a very limited market, and three, companies just want to fleece people for as much as they can. Similar to the way the education market often works. It's for school. It's 25% more expensive than if you go and buy it from some other source. And I really love the fact that you can get now sort of small scale manufacturing happening for items where there is small scale demand, but because of the speed with development you can do with 3D printing, the low cost relative to things like injection molding. It just makes it so much more accessible.
And I think it's not just the sort of manufacturing method that lends itself well to that. It's the open nature around it as well. The whole community of being open with designs and sharing knowledge.
People are incredibly kind and generous with their time.
It's very different to anything else, I think. It's happening more across other fields, like in software. It happens more now, but it's not the same. I can't think of another industry that you could put in any kind of bracket where you could say, well, this is open to.
I think the only thing that compares is kind of the open source hardware movement, your Adafruit, your SparkFun, that sort of stuff. Because I feel like I experienced a very similar atmosphere at Hackaday SuperCon, which is obviously very much like hardware hacking. But again, I think the thing that is the commonality here is the open source, not necessarily the output, but the fact that these are folks who are committed to the idea that their things be free and available, and that makes such a huge difference. I am still trying to get my camera working, by the way. I just swapped out the battery, and I assumed it would just turn back on, and of course it has not. Because
another one that was
be easy
from a visual brain melty point of view was Natalie from 3D Print Bunny.
Oh yeah,
who was directly opposite where we were, and she's a 3D print designer who had a couple of Bamboo Labs printers going. And she was essentially printing with wires, so things, she had a full, well, not full scale, but a I don't know, probably 800mm tall Eiffel Tower that was done in multiple parts. But what she'd done is with the printing, she'd then printed not in the way you would normally print with a slicer. I don't know how she was doing it, but things like printing the cables.
She'd made use of being able to string out a single line of very, very thin plastic and stretch it out into a very thin wire. And she'd used that a lot in her designs. So it was very cool.
No, I'm small. What is going on?
So the main print she had that was kind of constantly going throughout the day was looked kind of like a boxing ring or a wrestling ring type thing of having vertical pillars and then having what looked like kind of ropes weaved around. And this was, the pillars were done in one color, and then the ropes were alternate colors, and they would be weaved through one way, and they'd be kind of anchored in at one point, and then just weaved either side of posts to the other corner post. So making use of the material properties and the motion system of the print without having to do all of the other bullshit witchcraft stuff that you'd normally get in a slicer to do something like that. It's really, really, again, that kind of, it's back to that mind-bending kind of thing of it, of like outside of full control. Yeah, exactly. It's that sidestep out of what the rest of us can do. And to see something like like I say, something like the Eiffel Tower that wasn't just printed in layers that way. It had those, she printed diagonally up a truss with a single extrusion of filament as a cable, which was just mind-boggling to see. I couldn't work out how to do that myself.
Sort of almost the point between the cutting-edge research where you're like, we've done a cool thing with a 3D printer that no one's done before, and actually we're doing stuff. So I suspect there is the industry side of it. Look, we've got a cool machine. And then also there's I'm doing cool things with a machine. And then there's the, like bleeding edge. This is a thing that we've done in a lab. Why? I don't know. Just no one's done it before.
I think that's part of the attraction to it all for me as well, is that not all the things have been done yet, right? And the accessibility for someone with a printer at a shed to do something completely new and just like blow people's minds, and it's a really low entry point for someone to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And if you are into, so both of you are 3D printing nerds, you won't mind me saying that, I know. You've come away being very inspired by the event, but if you're the sort of person who's like, oh, I quite like 3D printing, or I might buy a 3D printer, would you recommend going to Smurf?
There were a few people that we bumped into. I mean, when Duncan was getting 3D scanned, for instance, I had a family wander up to me because I was kind of stood around watching Duncan get scanned.
Loads of kids.
And looked like I knew what I was doing.
You have that.
And it was, it's I just happened to be at the top of the stairs where you could have gone left or right, and it was grandparents with the grandkids, and they'd obviously wandered past and gone, this looks interesting, what's this all about? And they walked in, they knew nothing, they knew no idea of what to expect, and their heads were on swivels, seeing stuff just happening, and they were just asking me questions about what was going on. And the kids then wandered off. They saw colors and robots and Lego stuff and things like that. Matt Denton was just in the next room with a big Lego go-kart. So the kids were off finding the fancy stuff, and then the grandparents were chatting to me about all of like the weird and wonderful options for this stuff. And just from that sort of conversation, you could see that they were becoming more interested in it as they were learning a bit more about it. They were kind of questioning the possibility of whether they should get into it.
We definitely got some people at my booth that were a little bit like that, didn't we? That were like, they had no clue, like none at all. And they were just like kind of looking at my table going, what is this?
What is this 3D printing thing anyway?
Yeah. How is this, like, explain to me how these things are related. Because they look,
you got a lot of that
unrelated.
Why is there a knee and a mug and a bookmark?
But I also had to explain several times to people that the ceramic stuff was in fact not 3D printed, because that was the assumption.
But that's what we're going to start to see, I think, more of, because what you're doing, Ali, with the work that you've been doing with the Art Council.
No,
the Art Council
is
you are showing.
England.
I think a lot of people think, and by a lot of people, I'm talking about general public, not makers, and possibly even a certain proportion of makers. That kind of the strange people who focus on one thing, like just woodwork. Or
3D printing, because again,
they think 3D printing is just it's just this thing where you go on Thingiverse or other thing, you print out a model and you have some toys, or you might print out a pencil pot or something. But I think as more people like yourself doing the work you are with the Arts Council, for anyone who didn't get that reference, go and watch Ali's last video. You are showing how a 3D printer can be a really useful tool for somebody who does focus predominantly on one thing. So the ceramicists, who've focused just on ceramics, who have a wheel and a kiln and maybe do some slab work and whatever, might see what you're doing and go, oh,
well, that's it. That
opens up a possibility. There's a thing I've been wanting to make forever, but I can't do it with just a wheel and a slab work. But with that, now I can.
Yeah, and that was exactly what happened, because again, I wasn't lying when I said I'd been working on this for the better part of the last year. And a lot of that work has happened in the communal ceramics studio where I do my ceramics work. And so I've been doing it around people. It's not been like I've been doing this in the secret lab where nobody could see me working on it. No, it's been amongst the public, so to speak. And most of the folks in the studio don't really necessarily know much about 3D printing, though not none, because one of my studio mates absolutely uses 3D printing to facilitate her slip casting. And she 3D prints positives and then creates plaster molds from those positives, which is exactly like what I did with my knee. And is a very well-established, using 3D printing for slip casting, I think is a very well-established thing. It is done extremely well by a lot of people. And I absolutely, I did not come up with 3D printing molds. I didn't invent that by any means.
I don't think you've ever tried to claim that you have either, though.
No, I don't think I have, but I digress. What I wanted to do, though, was, to try and find just a different way to approach this thing that was, again, easier, less messy, simpler, and again, didn't require plaster, could just be, something done with slabs, but also was, maybe something that people hadn't necessarily thought to do before. And not necessarily reinventing the wheel, just maybe finding a new use for it. And that I definitely think I pulled off. But it was interesting whilst I was doing this process, and people would come up to me, literally while I'm working, and being like, "What's that made out of?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's plastic." And they'd be like, "What? You made the plastic thing?" It's like, "Yes, with a 3D printer." And they're like, "Okay. I don't understand." Explain to me how literally all of this works. And so it was interesting, even though these were people who'd been working with clay for anywhere from a year to decades. It was a different way to look at this ancient art, a different approach, and a way, and also it was also fun to be doing some of these things and have people looking at it from the perspective of, again, ceramics, knowing ceramics and only ceramics and not necessarily this other stuff, and being like, that's not going to work. There's no, the vase, the twisty vase, of which I actually have the original 3D printed version here. Yeah, this is the same design, just this is the 3D printed version that I colored with markers.
Another good video.
People, that's an old one now, but yeah, people looked at this kind of this shape, and they looked at the clay, and they're like, I just there's this probably, I can see where this isn't going to work. And I was just like, okay. I appreciate the feedback. Check back with me in a couple weeks, you know? And yeah, and it does work. Like, that's the thing. Like, you are able to do complex shapes that you wouldn't normally be able to do with slabs, or like that would typically require slip casting. But in this case, you get the slip casted results without slip casting. So like, it's an alternative, basically. That's all it was ever meant to be, is another approach, another way to do things. It by no means removes slip casting from the game, because slip casting is incredibly useful for mass manufacturing, for making lots of things really quickly. And this is fast, but not that fast. But again, it's just that it's different. It's just a different thing. And
it's another evolution. It's another evolution in the craft of ceramics.
And it is absolutely a way that 3D printing can facilitate creativity that I think is not always immediately apparent. Because people look at 3D printers and I think they think, printing figurines, printing tchotchkes, printing little tools or little useful things. And then if they're more experienced with 3D printing, they might also think about like slightly more complex things, like printing more complex tools that you have to assemble and stuff like that. Like things like, honestly, I love the fact that like I can download and 3D print all the like a bunch of parts, and then go and source the electronics and build my own electronic slider, like camera slider system. I can do that because somebody designed that and they're selling it, and that's great. I love that. But this was something that felt like, I don't know, it felt like there was more room to be explored in it. I
think this is kind of that same sort of thing, though, isn't it? That you're using 3D printing as a tool to augment and improve a process in another, ancient art, or
without removing the hand building aspect. Because like that's
absolutely
the thing. Like this could easily be a thing where it's like, oh well, it just becomes fully automated. Because again, you can 3D print in ceramics. That's actually, again, a thing that I did not come up with that already exists. And it's cool, but it's different. It's different. And I absolutely, whatever I did, I knew that I wanted it to be a thing that remained hand built. You were still getting in there. You're still using your hands to make a thing out of clay. The 3D printer didn't take that away from you. You still had to, get in with your hands. Literally, this is like one of the things I'm explaining in the video is that when you're designing your mold, you need to be able to get your hands in there, because like you're not just pouring a liquid in, you are pressing a piece of clay into the shape. So like whether you make it in parts or you make it with like a big wide mouth, you got to get your hands in there. And I did a lot of this motion in the video. Get your hands
not demonetized yet.
Not demonetized yet. No.
Audio listeners, I'm not going to describe it. You'll need to go and watch it. 1 hour 52.
It shifts your creativity, doesn't it? It takes away that, because you could make a mold, you could make a slab mold from wood. There are for casting, whether not slip casting, but for casting metal, there are tool and die and pattern makers. That was a really skilled craft for a long time that was very well paid to make the master molds for things out of wood, foam board, whatever. CNC and 3D printing, it doesn't get rid of that job. It just shifts your creativity and lowers the barrier to entry. You can fail really frequently in a computer for essentially free. So your creativity is no longer, I need to learn how to make a mold. So what I'm going to do is make a box, because that's achievable. You can say, actually, I'm going to make a 3D printed version and I can make it interesting. So my creativity is no longer stifled by my, I can't make lots of molds because I've never made many molds. I'm not a sculptor, I'm whatever. But I do know how to use CAD. And actually, even if you don't, it's a relatively easy thing to learn basics for. There are a reasonable number of good courses. It's essentially draw something in 2D and pull it into 3D space, add a bit on, cut a bit out. That's CAD. And as long as you can get over that, 3D printing it's almost like the CAD is the real barrier that people get scared by.
The 3D printing bit is actually like, and I even say this, they don't have to be great prints, actually. They can be kind of crappy prints even, because you can clean it up in the clay. Like the clay is actually so much easier. Like people, people really do stress about the layer lines. Like they really do, like both during the process of kind of like developing this and also after the release of the video. I get a lot of the but there's layer lines. And it's like, yes, I'm aware that there's layer lines, but here's this thing. Clay is malleable. And you literally take a sponge and you just kind of wipe it and the layer lines kind of disappear. So it's like, it doesn't the layer lines are weirdly enough, they don't matter, but it also doesn't matter how skilled you are with the 3D printer. You don't have to have a super well-tuned 3D printer to do this. You're absolutely right, James. The big barrier to entry is the CAD like knowledge. You got to have at least a little bit, but you don't need a lot actually to be able to get started.
And like you said, that
first step,
that camera slider, there is someone who's done it. The first rule of 3D printing is not how can I design this, it's has it been done before. So like unless you really think your creative outlet is making 3D models, just go and look to see if someone's made it before. The number of tools I've got a 3D, like within arm's reach, like over my shoulder there is a vacuum nozzle adapter. Someone else made that. I didn't model it, but I did adjust it slightly so that it's now got screw holes on the side. That's the level of like CAD that is incredibly useful. Of can I stick a couple of squares on the side and put some holes through? Yes, I'll make it swoopy and nice, but you don't need to.
Honestly, I love when I don't have to make the thing and I can just download the thing. I do appreciate that. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't like
as a CAD professional, there is a horrible tipping point that me and Duncan moan about with each other all the
regularly.
Time, I have like actively spent an hour going through Thingiverse and printables and all the rest to try and find the least crap model that's already been done, because there are multiple versions of a thing. And then I've got the thing, I've downloaded the least crap one, and then realized that I have to remake it anyway because I'm frustrated by overlapping segments that haven't been deleted because the person didn't know what they were doing. And I could have very easily made the thing in 5 minutes if I'd known what it was supposed to look like at the very end. Whether that's a bit of
that horrible up and down of like, oh, someone's already done the thing that I need. Great, I'll grab it. Oh shit, it's terrible.
Yep. Gonna remake
it. But as printers get better, like that, it is going to get easier and easier to just go, oh, I'll just print it quickly, and it will look good. So like, I was listening to Making It, the podcast, and there was this subcontext. Like, so Bob was talking about he's got a new Prusa XL and a bamboo printer, and being like so inspired by it, going like, oh, the quality is so good. And David Pachucha saying, yeah, but I like my resin printer. And like, I fully got the point that Bob was desperate to be like, printers have got better. You don't, unless you are making jewelry or highly detailed small parts,
tiny things.
You do not need a resin printer to get parts that look like they have been made, injection molded almost. Layer lines are, it's not a thing. Like I had an Ultimaker 2 that I bought in 2015, and I've got a Bamboo Labs printer now. It's almost like someone's giving me a crayon and a fountain pen. Yeah. Completely different.
Like someone's giving you a crayon and a magic wand. Like
or a 2D.
It's like these things are not, one of these things is not like the other. But though of course I do think it is worth saying though that there are still things that resin printers accomplish better, but that's, I think,
mess, for instance.
Well, there's that. It is shifting.
Castable stuff.
It is shifting, and obviously you can still get, like, if you have a good resin printer, you got like an 8K resin printer, you're getting resolutions that you still can't achieve on an FDM printer. Also, if you need to print 100 little tiny short things, and the fact that it takes the same amount of time as printing one of them on the same bed, like there are things that resin, I think, still can do exceptionally well that FDM can't. But I say this as somebody who has 3 FDM printers and 0 resin printers, so clearly, like, my allegiance is clear. Also, I don't have a place to do resin, so there's that. But all the same, like, it is, the technology is exploding and doing lots of amazing things. Though there was one last thing though that I wanted to mention, Andy, that I think is a really, like, lovely, delightful thing that has come from me sharing this technique. is that I've had a number of people comment that they're now going to be doing collaborations with their partners or kids because they have the tech knowledge and their spouse or their kid is into ceramics. So now they're going to do this collaboration together and they're going to make a thing. And I was like, you know what? That's great. I actually really like that. I like that this is not just maybe making people go, oh, I could do this thing, but this, oh, I can do this thing with my kid, or I can do this thing with my partner, and we can do it together, and we'll both get to do the bits that we really like, and we'll get a final piece out of it that's really cool. Like that, I think that I like when that is the end result of all of the work. Like people,
I remember when people were doing that with their kids' drawings and things and turning them into a 3D model and stuff. But I think that takes it to another level of that kind of finished thing.
Yeah. People working together and being together is nice, is good. Love plus making equals excellence. So yeah.
and I think it's particularly now the cost is coming down. And I know things like the bamboo printers are still, for most people, quite expensive. They've just released their cheap FDM printer. And I think we're going to see again, as we have, if we think, James, your Ultimaker 2 from 2015. I'm not going to ask you how much that cost, but I suspect it was a significant amount of money.
Ultimaker.
More than the bamboo.
Yeah.
More than probably 4 of them.
Yeah, to the point that there's an auction I've seen recently of an auction value. They have no idea what they're looking at most of the time. That's why I love it. They've got an Ultimaker 2 Plus, so the upgraded version, and the opening price for that is £450 without VAT and without the auctioneer's commission. They think that that's how much it's worth.
Yeah,
it is not.
Yeah,
but yeah, the
drop a zero off maybe.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Oof.
But the price is coming down and the accessibility is increasing, and I think, I mean, all of us here have been making since we were kids, and I think it's opening up the scope with particularly, and I think with thinking about schools, the speed at which printers are now working. I mean, I've been in so many schools where there's a 3D printer, and it's just like, okay, well, how often does that get used? We limit to the size the students can actually print, or it might be to sixth formers only because they're just so slow. But now when you can print off a benchy in 16 minutes for the bamboo.
14 on the A1 Mini, they claim.
Yeah, it's you've now got something that is much more accessible. We're going to see a generation of makers, engineers, technologists coming through who've had access to techniques that didn't exist when we were kids.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what this
leads. I think it's absolutely exciting.
I mean, it's funny because what you're talking about, it reminded me of the fact that like one of my friends, one of their kids was using an iPad when she was less than 2. And she's got to be, I think, like 11 or 12 now. And so she's literally going to be coming up maybe in this. Like she might be the same generation that's going to be doing the things that you're talking about. And it already, like, my mind was blown by the idea of an infant using an iPad, like using a computer. They're gonna be brilliant, I think, with the things that they have available to them and the opportunities of that. I think that this kiddo's generation, and I love the fact too that her name is Ada after Ada Lovelace. Yeah, like she's been set up. She's been set up for greatness, and she is pretty awesome. I have to say, having known her whole life, she's a great kid. Like the things that her generation are going to be set up to do. Like I'm excited. Actually, it's one of those. I feel like there's a lot of things that make me less excited about the future. One of the things that does make me excited about the future is kids like this. Like it's kind of like, oh man, they're gonna grow up to be amazing. They're gonna be so cool. They're gonna save our dumb old asses. Like when the world is falling apart and we're a bit decrepit, they're gonna be stepping in to save the day. So like I'm excited about that.
Well, let's hope so. Great. Yeah.
So I am admittedly starting to turn into a pumpkin.
I was just about to say that sort of seems like a good kind of way to wrap up the evening.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think we're wrapping up the year as well. It's
we are
the last
wrapping
episode
up the
of
year
the
with
year.
friends.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
It's a holiday season.
Heck,
coming around the corner. Some schools have already broken up, some haven't.
Yeah, the ones has.
So it's exciting times. I won't put everyone on the spot and say what the New Year's resolutions or similar or plans for next year are, but it sounds like visits to Smurf should be on the cards.
agreed.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I pick themes. I try and do
Themes
themes.
are good. Themes are
Yeah.
good.
Ooh.
Yeah, theme for a few bits through the year because resolutions don't tend to work for very long. So
No.
trying to be
I mean,
healthier.
with screen sizes change and
whatever.
stuff, if you just go dark theme every time, you're all good.
It's just system default, yeah.
Yeah.
So have you already got a theme for 2024 then, James?
No. In short,
You got time. You got time.
and
It's
January is theme deciding month.
I suspect your theme will be dictated to you by small creatures.
It will. I think my theme for the year is Maltesers or mini malts.
Diapers.
Yeah.
It will be moving things out of arm's reach.
Yes.
And securing things.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the three of us will be at Maker Central at least for one of the days. So
I am planning on being there. So that is the plan thus far, provided that I don't get sent off to a faraway land outside of my control. I will be there.
Well, you have to kind of let them know there's an important development meeting that you need to go to.
No, absolutely.
Mm.
I just could say actually, that is very, very likely to be the case. Where I'm just like, no. These dates are important.
Get it in the calendar.
Mm-hmm. I need to actually look up on the
the
dates.
iCalendar. Yeah.
We're not gonna get into that. That topic's off topic. That topic's off limits. Just gonna make that face. I'll just make that.
I think that face says it all.
It does.
Yeah, I thank you all for coming on. It's
yes, definitely,
Pleasure.
and for being a part
pleasure.
of. All the three of you have all been a wonderfully enriching part of the podcast anyway since day one.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
I think definitely recommend this episode to people who are into, or not necessarily into, but maybe interested in 3D printing.
Yeah.
Do you like interesting stuff?
Yeah.
Listen to this one.
Yeah.
Do you like things? Possibly stuff? Well, you're in luck.
Do you like
discuss both of
things?
these things.
Fangs, everses, principles.
Cults.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh no, it is definitely time, as my cat is like decided that now is the time to chew on all of the stuff. Because clearly I've taken.
Well, let's say goodbye to folks and wish everyone a happy
very
holidays,
much.
happy Christmas, happy New Year, whatever else they need to be happy with. But have a safe few weeks of
Take it easy.
festivity and whatever else that you get up to this time of year.
Take it cheesy.
Bye.
Have an enjoyable,
On the
festive perineum, everyone. Wait, when are we doing intros?